And joining us for more on tonight's topic is William March, a veteran newspaper reporter who wrote for both the Tampa Tribune and now writes for the Tampa Bay Times, and Robert Pernarski, the publisher of the Herald Standard in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, just outside Pittsburgh. And we should note the paper is owned by our parent company, Calkins Media. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. And Wendy, let me start with you because you lived this. You worked for the Tribune for years. You are a preeminent political reporter. Give us some context about your experience in terms of how long ago was the heyday of the Tribune, and what did you see towards the end?
Well, the heyday, I guess, for the newspaper industry as a whole, the peak was the late 80s through about the late 90s, and that's roughly the time that I was starting my career at the Tribune. When I joined the newspaper, or within a few years after I joined it, in the late 1980s, the Tampa Tribune employed more than 2,000 people. By the time it was sold a couple of weeks ago, as your report mentioned, to its rival, that was less than 300 people.
Now, the practical impact of that, and we've talked about this many times, and Wendy covered my political race when I ran for Congress a couple of years ago. And one of the main bones of contention that I had is that the race was not covered often enough. And other races, state rep, state senate races, county commission races, they simply were not covered. And was that the impact of the financial duress that the paper was undergoing?
Well, that was absolutely part of it. I mentioned a few minutes ago the late 80s, the early 90s as the heyday. At that time, we had 3 full-time political reporters. When I covered your race, I was the only full-time political reporter, and the number of other reporters who would pitch in during election season to help cover local and regional races like yours had greatly shrunk. Your race, we did not do high volumes of coverage on your race, so you can imagine how little we did on a state house member's race, a state senator's race, a county commissioner's race.
And the real loss is to the reading public, because without that kind of reporting, all you are left to is the TV commercials that the candidates air, and who can shout the loudest without really a full understanding of what candidate A or B is for.
That's right. It's what's being lost, and to me this is the biggest single point. What's being lost in the decline of the industry is not so much the community newspaper level or the big national newspaper levels. The healthiest newspapers in the country are the big nationals. Who's getting hurt are the metros, the regionals, and their specialty is covering state and local government.
And Robert, you've worked for both. You work now for the community-type newspaper, but you've also worked at the larger dailies. What is the financial challenge?
Well, there's financial challenges for both, but the financial challenges are less with true community newspapers. In my market, we have seen growth in our audience, still challenged by the national revenue dollars that we once saw. But, you know, we are exploring different ways of increasing our audience.
And primarily that is through the use of digital content, and you're even turning a lot of your newspapers into video journalism.
We're turning our newspapers into broadcast stations.
Because after all, that is the way a lot of us these days, people our age, are getting their news, is on their iPhones or their tablets, and surely that's how the younger people are getting their news information. But can you charge the same thing for advertising digitally that you could in your newspapers?
Yeah, that is the challenge. You know, we're probably seeing 10 to 20 cents on a dollar on a digital advertising promotion versus what we were seeing on the print side. So we have to be creative from an advertising standpoint in working with advertisers where we're packaging both digital, video, our daily broadcast along with print. So the advertising strategy going to market has to change to educate the advertisers that, you know, we are more than just simply a product that goes thump on your doorstep.
Well, what are the readers supposed to make out of this? Because here in Sarasota, look, the Herald Herald Tribune just won a Pulitzer. And that's terrific. And the Tampa Bay Times just won yet another Pulitzer. They won it together. So the layperson may say, hey, look, these newspapers are doing pretty good work. So what are you folks talking about?
Well, there's still a lot of demand for the content that's produced. And to me, this is an important point. It's not so much a matter of whether it's printed on a piece of paper or put on the internet. The question is the kind of journalism that mainstream newspapers have practiced, regardless how it's, in what form it's published.
And it's not just the Tampa Tribune. You know, we've noticed, frankly, at the Tampa Times, which is the survivor here, that you see almost on a regular basis some of their finest reporters leaving for greener pastures. I understand that always happens, but it happens more often around here than just about any place else.
And a newspaper has to become hyper-local in their content. And that's one of the things that I think major metros, along with the community papers, have to strive to develop relevant content that can't be found anywhere else. You know, it can't be found on CNN. It can't be found anywhere besides the local community newspaper.
The question is, are people willing to pay for that content? Because some newspapers charge you to look at their articles, others do not. Some, like the Herald Tribune, you get a certain amount of free articles a month, and then you're blocked out whether you're willing to pay. You know, frankly, in terms of my reading habits, when that well comes out, I check out.
Yes. My community newspaper, we do have somewhat of a hard paywall. And we do have those subscribers that are willing to pay. In fact, our greatest circulation gains have come over the last couple of years from those subscribers who just want the digital access to the website. So between the audience growth and the incremental dollars from just those that want the digital side, community newspapers continue to thrive.
And Wendy, I'll give you the last word, because when we lose someone like you in terms of writing about politics on a daily basis, and we replace you with maybe people who are not earning anywhere near what you make, we lose basically your experience about the community that we're serving and the history of the races that you're covering.
Well, Alan, again, I think this is a problem, the decline of the metro papers, the regional papers, as opposed to community papers like Bob's or the big nationals like the New York Times. People are very interested in national politics, but it's state government and local government that have a good deal more direct effect on your lives, and it's the analysis, investigation, coverage at that level, state and local governments, that's being lost.
And unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. I thank you both for coming in.